Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wowhead Weekly show number 198. I am Annie Fuchsia, or just simply Annie. I am a full time streamer on Twitch. Usually, you can find me playing World of Warcraft. As you guys know, there's tons and tons of classic hype right now. Even in less than an hour today, we have the second stress test going on. So, before we get into that, let me first also introduce my co host, the lovely Perculia.
Hey everyone, I'm Perk. I run Wowhead. Wanted to get a quick show in because Annie is traveling during our usual time slot, and the stress test is starting pretty soon. But there was actually, a fair amount of PTR news and classic updates, and even some live news that we just wanted to go over quickly. So we're gonna run through kind of an abridged version of the news. And yeah, thanks for joining us on this unconventional day for the show.
Mm-hmm. Yes, as Perk said, I'm actually traveling tomorrow morning, which is for me in about 12 hours or so. So I'm supposed to fit in some packing and sleeping and traveling to the airport in that time. But I'm excited. I'm going to be in Dallas, actually. And after a few days in Dallas, I'm traveling over to California. And I might, hopefully, be able to meet
Yeah,
Perk.
fingers crossed. Yeah.
Fingers crossed, hopefully. And have an IRL Wowhead show. That would be awesome if we could
Yeah,
do that.
Annie, me, and Brightpaw in the same frame. So that'd be
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Imagine that. If it wasn't so complicated, maybe I could have carried Luna with me too. But I
Exactly.
don't think 10-hour flights is a good idea. I'm not even sure if I'd want her on a 1 hour flight. So, yeah, it's not happening. But hopefully we could meet. I think that would be very lovely to have a show together like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that'd be very cool. You're only 20 minutes away from me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so the live news. We actually have a
Yes.
live news section this show,
Yes.
which
Yes.
we usually don't.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the first thing is that Blizzard won't say this is a bug or intended, but if you kept the gift of Nazoth with the eyeball on your head, you started hearing whispers, a lot of whispers last week. And previously, if you had the gift of Nazoth, you could interact with some NPCs and you would get strange dialogue or see some of them also wearing the gift. So a lot of people thought that this was going to hint at a big reveal this week, being like, oh, there's whispers, something's going to come.
Mm-hmm.
Because with Legion, they had the Fel Reaver sounds leading up to the major Legion announcements.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we nobody knows what they were saying. It's also in the language of the old gods, but we're pretty sure, we heard the word Nizoth being spoken.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they've mostly stopped now. But yeah, people it was definitely very creepy and was getting people hype again for 8.2.
Mm-hmm.
The original speculation was that this week was going to be the 77-day mark after patch 815. So people are like, oh, maybe we'll get a little quest or something,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
but we didn't get anything. So who knows? Do you think it was a bug, or do you think maybe Blizzard was trying to, I don't know, like kind of reminds like, hey, 8.2's here, not just classic, creepy whispers, old gods, come back to 8.2.
So from what I understand, it's actually gone now from the game. So it
Yeah,
was there for some time and then it was gone.
yeah, it suddenly started and
Mm-hmm.
then kind of stopped. So
That's
yeah.
really weird. I don't know. Can that be a bug? It feels like a very creepy bug and it's almost
Yeah.
intended bug if that's the case, and it's not really a bug anymore. I don't know. It's like the whispers are creepy themselves. They suddenly stop whispering, completely gone. That just raises more questions, and maybe that's the point as well.
Yeah, maybe, and this was only for people that had the gift.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of like, oh, if you have the gift, maybe sometimes the old gods will, I don't know, flood your head with whispers, and then they'll stop, so you'll think nothing is wrong, and then they'll start up again.
Yeah, then you'll go even more crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, we don't know what's up with that, but
Hope
definitely,
it's
even if
intentional.
it was a bug, it was a nice bit of flavor,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, it reminded me of the Legion Fell Reaver noises that were popping up at the end of Warlords.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like, what is the gift of Nazoth? I haven't played for a while. The gift of Nazoth is there's a quest where you reunite with Xalatath, and if you choose to keep the gift of Nazoth, then you have this eyeball on your head, and you can see some spooky interactions. And if you cleanse it, that is, the right thing to do, and you get a toy that puts the eyeball on your head.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're doing the quest and you have it, if you choose not to turn in the quest, then you just keep the creepy eyeball on your head.
Mm-hmm. I heard a couple
So
comments of Perk possibly being a little bit lower. I turned her up by 10%. Let us know if that sounds good. Just wanted to put that in there quickly.
yep.
But yeah,
Um,
I'm really happy when these kind of things happen. I hope that it wasn't a bug, and I hope it was intended. And maybe we will. Maybe it's one of those things that will kind of switch on and off. It's just a little period first. Some people start talking about it, and then maybe a week later, maybe there's more. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I was thinking that maybe the whispers were going to lead up to a little introductory quest line because there's still so much of 8.2 we don't know about, like how do we get from our cities to Nashatar?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do we decide to go there versus somewhere else? So I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking that maybe we get a little teaser quest, kind of like
Mm.
Magni in Legion, where we saw the Azeroth Nightmare scenario 3 weeks before. So I was thinking maybe we'd get this thing, or there'd be like a, I don't know, patch cinematic
Mm-hmm.
or a release date. But I don't know, the week's still early, but right now it's just kind of being creepy and mysterious, very
Mm-hmm.
similar to the old gods themselves.
Maybe people who decided to keep the gift of Nazoth will have a slightly different way of getting to those islands.
Oh, that would be interesting because, I mean, you're on different sides.
Yeah.
Like you're the chosen of Nazoth.
Mm-hmm. That could be
So
interesting.
for the other bit of live news, Warlords of Draenor Time Walking is here for the first time. And
Mm-hmm.
there are 2 new mounts and also some toys that you can purchase.
Mm-hmm.
So
So hopefully
there
you
are
decided to collect 5,000 time walking badges on two
10,000.
characters.
Oh, right. Yes,
Or that.
5,000 on 2 factors. Yeah.
Or that, whichever is easiest for you. I guess some people prefer to just farm everything on one character. The way that I did it was I would do the weekly quest that you can only do once, that gives you 500 badges, and I
Right.
would do that like 10 times. So over time, I ended up having lots of badges. So that's how I'm gonna buy my mounts. But yes, correct. You need 10,000 time walking badges in order to afford both. And the toys, I believe, are maybe a couple hundred badges.
Yeah, the toys are, I got them in this little chart here.
Mm-hmm.
The Apexis focusing shard is 500 and the
Mm-hmm.
banner of the burning blade is 750.
Okay. So for the 500 one, you could actually just log an alt,
Yeah.
do the weekly quest that, or it's like it's not really a weekly quest, but it happens once every time the event is up. You
Yeah, it's
clear
like a
it.
special reward quest.
Mm-hmm. And you can repeat it every time this event is back on again. So you do one dungeon, you get 500 badges, and then you can suddenly afford a toy. And then you go for the second toy if you want to do that efficiently with a new character, another alt that also will get the 500 badges for just completing one dungeon. And then you farm for the 250 remaining to get 750.
Yeah, and if you, for some reason, don't need any of the items, you can still earn badges to count towards future weeks. So, for example, there's the Burning Crusade Reigns of the Eclipse Dragonhawk, and Burning Crusade Time Walking is coming in June. There's a Mismount for 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
There are other funny things like the Portable Yak Wash is also 500 badges. So, if you do those one-time quests, you can save up on characters to get toys for future time walking events.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, I was gonna say
I see a
something.
question in the chat as you're thinking about your
Okay,
also. Are we
yeah,
sure it's 10,000? Yes. Each mount is 5,000 each. And then the toys are at 500 and 750.
yep. Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that while Burning Crusade and Wrath Time Walking have raids associated with them, Miss and Warlords do not currently, and there's no indication that they will have raids. The next time we come across them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd also say that this was making me think back on Warlords, and I know it had a rep for issues with max level content, but it was making me appreciate the leveling story and getting to see some of the characters from Warcraft's past. Actually seeing them, like, we hear about Durotan, but he was long dead by the time Warcraft started, so it was cool to actually see, a version of him and seeing Draenei culture thriving differently. So I don't know, it was making me a little nostalgic and kind of wishing that they didn't cut those patches and Warlords and we could have seen more of the story, since I think that the questing story was one of the parts that was well done from the expansion.
Mm-hmm. And I
So
think that's also the nice thing with these time walking events, having that little glimpse in the past. Probably the like the prime, not prime, yeah, one of the main reasons why they probably decided to make something like this. So that's awesome that you can feel that nostalgia.
yeah, I feel like a lot of people that are playing later maybe didn't play in Burning Crusade and Wrath, so they
Mm-hmm.
weren't like aware of why some of these places were cool, or why a toy has interesting significance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
what was the Yak Wash? Why is there a toy after the Yak Wash? Or why is this Elec that's fiery? Why is it cool? Oh, that looks like, a mount from the raid. So maybe it will make people learn more about these expansions they didn't play.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the two mounts
Yeah.
actually look really cool as well. They
Yeah, which do you like better? I think I like the
ooh,
wolf more.
okay, I need to look at them again to be able to decide. Let's see. Um yes, I agree. The wolf does look a lot cooler. It has like is that armor that makes it look like it's got
Yeah,
fangs?
fiery armor. Yeah, I think so.
Looks really cool. Yeah, the wolf is my favorite for sure. So if you're only deciding or if you can only afford one this event, I'd go for the wolf.
Yeah. So we have some PTR news, as there was a build and some discoveries in raid testing since our last show. And the first thing I wanted to highlight was that one of our guide writers, Sang Helios, discovered that Operation Mechagon, the new dungeon, will have a hard mode that can be enabled.
That's
So
so cool.
it's not like, normal or set it to heroic. It's you do things in a certain order, and then the boss is just harder,
Yeah.
which I think is really cool. It's very much like Ulduar, which makes sense as they're both, mechanical related areas.
Mm-hmm.
So the description is, if you want to activate the hard version of the fourth boss, who drops like a mount and a ton of cool stuff, um, you you need to have the boss is called the HK8 Aerial Oppression Unit, and it needs to be flying in the background for all three of the encounters in a particular order. And obviously, as he's flying around, he makes the encounters harder. And then when you actually fight the aerial oppression unit on hard mode, he has more health, deals more damage. He has like tank buster adds. He has all sorts of weird mechanical energy fields, and things can go really bad very quickly. I'm reading this, and apparently there's an anti-trespassing field that follows the healer, and if
Oh.
any player at the time leaves the field, um, all players will be teleported back to the center of the arena, and you keep being teleported
Mm.
back until you reach this thing called the overcharge station. I think it's really funny how it follows the healer around.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really
So
exciting. Mm-hmm.
we don't know what it rewards, but it feels like Nightbane, and it's a very similar situation because Karazhan launched without a Mythic Plus, but Nightbane was a special timed encounter that rewarded players with the mount. So maybe this will have something similar, where if you do the hard mode and you defeat the fourth boss on hard mode, he will, I don't know, drop something extra.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe a mount or something. You're right, because the Nightbane was sort of like a mini hard mode in a way because you had to make the timers for each one of those different
Mm-hmm.
buffs because they had a duration. That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
And
But
yeah, we don't
do
know
they
if this.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was
You
gonna
go
ask
first.
if you guys at Wowhead started calling this hard mode or if it's ingrained as hard mode itself.
So there in the data a few builds ago, one of the tiers of Vision of Perfection used to say in game that it was from the Operation Mechagon hard mode. So we were calling
Mm.
it hard mode because of that one little line of text.
Mm-hmm.
But Blizzard hasn't said anything about this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're just calling it a hard mode,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe there's a funnier name for this, like, I don't know, Doomsday race or something like it. Because the whole dungeon is about, you need to race to disable this Doomsday device that King Mechagon has
Yeah.
prepared.
So then people might start calling it that instead.
Yeah,
Just
I
like
don't know,
with
like
Karazhan, we
Doomsday
called it
Run.
timed runs, right? I think. I don't
Yeah.
remember. That's really cool, though.
So
I'm definitely a throwback to Ulduar, and very interesting because it's something that we saw, I think, for the first time in Ulduar, but like first time and last time, right? Because after Ulduar is when we started seeing the actual heroic modes where you switch.
yeah. Well, Tier 9 was a little weird because it had the timed runs, not the timed runs, the limited attempts for everything.
Oh yeah, I
And
remember
so
those. Mm-hmm.
and you got better rewards based on how cleanly you did things, like either 25 or
Mm-hmm.
45 or not wiping at all or immortal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of unconventional, but yeah, I think when once you got to Ice Crown, it just was like it was like
Normal
regular mode
heroic.
and
Yeah.
heroic
Mm-hmm.
mode. So yeah, also interesting that this was discovered around the time because Hearthstone is doing a little mechanical event next week as well. So maybe that's all related, or it's meant to, make you think about the mechanical presence coming back in Battle for Azeroth
Mm.
too.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
cool.
this next one is really fun. It is about emoting Queen Ashara. Uh,
Yes.
and I think a few weeks ago we talked about how if you were rude to her, she would insta kill you
Yes, we
in
did
the
mention
early
that.
part of the dungeon, but
Mm-hmm.
now she's sort of like toys with you more and does a lot of fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's a variety of things that can happen to you if
Mm-hmm.
you are rude to her and even if you like her.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you want to play a little bit of the video and I could go over the options, or how do you want to do this?
Wait,
What
I
are you
actually
used to?
don't have the video.
Oh, okay.
Wait,
I
I can
think I
get the
think it.
video as you talk about the here. Yeah, let me
Okay.
get the video.
Yeah. Okay. So in the final room, she's sort of swimming, flying around, and you can target her. And if you rude, angry, or spit on her, one of the following things happens. You are rooted in place for a minute. You are vomiting plague to everyone around you and eventually die. You turn into a gas cloud. We didn't
Die.
see that one, but it was data mined. You are disarmed. You can turn into a gigantic, overzealous Hulk giant Naga thing. You can turn into a plague slime. You can transform into something and speak the language of the old gods, or you get turned into a shimmer shell snail. And if you emote her nicely with a hug, flirt, or kiss, she will still give you the Queen's Disgust buff, but instead of being displeased, she will laugh at your advances, and you'll have little heart emojis over your head, and she'll like you, but you will turn hostile to all the people around you.
Okay, I have the video ready.
Okay, yeah, we can just show a little bit of it because we're trying out all the options over and over.
Mm-hmm. I'll play it here. Hopefully it's not too loud. No, the volume looks fine. There we go. Okay, the video's playing, and I've put the volume low enough so you can also commentate.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, it's basically like I said. So her final room is this sort of empty platform, and you can just emote at her, and she'll do different things. Obviously, we weren't in a raid for this, but if you were in a raid, it would obviously be really bad if you were, mind controlled and hostile to your party,
Mm-hmm.
or vomiting a plague on everyone surrounding you in 10 yards, or if you
Perfect that you said that.
emoted her. Yeah, if you emoted her during the actual fight and she rooted you in place and you had an instruction to run towards your other raid members, that would also not be good.
Oh, this one
Um,
showing right now is turning you into an overzealous Hulk.
yeah, that's super fun. Like you don't do anything. You're just there.
Mm-hmm.
So that, yeah, and if you emote her earlier before the encounter called Queen's Court, you will earn an achievement that is required for the glory of the Eternal Palace meta. So Yeah, these are just some of the options. As you can see, we're sort of doing the same emotes over and over, and we're getting turned into different things. So there's some variety to it.
Mm-hmm.
And they might even be adding more in the future. I should go check that. I want to see the gas clad one. That sounds really funny.
So it's completely random which one that happens, right?
Yeah, except that when you're nice to her and do like the kiss and flirt ones, you get the heart over your head.
Oh, perfect timing that you mentioned it because we see it right now. Yeah, it's always very funny when we have videos and you mention things exactly when it's showing on stream
Yay.
because it's like we can't synchronize that perfectly since Per can't see my screen, but in these
Yeah.
situations it's perfect. But yeah, that's really cool. Very nice details of random things happening, being rooted in place, or
Yeah.
vomiting, or
Yeah.
dying, turning into a gas cloud. You never know which one will happen to you.
So another thing that we learned about Ashara is we actually got to see her final room for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gotten a taste of it in the video, but we have better pictures that are focusing on the room without us, vomiting in the center of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the room, it's a very kind of empty circular room. So you might think circle of stars. It doesn't really have a lot of decorations. So it's unlike the rest of her palace. There are these gigantic Titan heads with chains, implying that this is the prison of Nazoth. And the water is surrounding this because she's managed to, part the seas and is keeping us sort of alive in this bubble. But the risk is obviously that she could always crash the, waves down on us. And in spite of all the people, her subjects we've killed, you can see that she still has a ton of Naga surrounding her and fish. So
Mm-hmm.
she's by no means undefended, which I think is really cool because usually when you fight an end boss, it's like, oh, here's the end boss and he's big in his lair in a shard. It's like, oh, she's doing fine. She's got lots of reinforcements. Uh, and I also wanted to talk a little bit about the actual raid testing, which we saw for a few hours. It was pretty interesting because normally raid testing is for an hour, but I think they kept it open for 3 or 4 hours because
Oh.
it was so difficult to get past her early phases. And
Ah.
the first phase was sort of weird, and I actually wrote a little post on it earlier today because the first phase is a little theatrical play of two cursed lovers, and it's very quick and it feels a little lighthearted for the encounter. It's like, why is Ashara giving us a play? But I think it symbolizes how highborn culture both likes the theater. We've seen that in some archaeology things, and also that she can turn everyone against each other. It could be a metaphor for the factions that should be getting along and celebrating after Legion, now instead hating each other and fighting over Azerite, or she's taking a pure story like love and perverting it, and that's like us, turning peace into wartime and everything going poorly. So yeah, that was an interesting phase. But then the next phase was even funnier because she has something called Queen's Decree, and she tells you to do a bunch of different things, but it's different than the people surrounding you. So she might say something like, stand in place and absorb an orb, or stand in place and or stand in place but don't be next to anyone else, so you have to coordinate everyone around you.
Mm.
So, and then it's like, oh, if you don't follow the decree, she's going to do an explosion. And then obviously, if too many people mess up, they all get exploded and die.
That sounds like a
So,
tough one for pugs.
yeah, it sounds deceptively simple. Like you look and you're like, oh, like I need to stand in place.
Yep.
Obviously, I can stand in place. But then it's like, oh, well, the person next to me, like, I'm told that I need to stand next to people, but the person next to me is told I need to get away from people. So how do
Who
we?
should
And if
move?
that person runs away, and I'm meant to stand still next to people, now no one's next to me. So it's deceptively complex, and it
Mm-hmm.
was pretty fun to watch people wiping. I know it's not simple, it just was funny how you see something flash on the screen like stand still, and it's like, oh, we couldn't do this
Yeah.
because of these weird complicated things.
Mm-hmm.
um and yeah, I think last week, did we talk about the night elves not being present? Maybe that was 2 weeks ago. Like it
Yeah, we
felt it
mentioned
felt bad.
Tyrande. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's still the encounter still feels a little incomplete because, as you've seen from some of the pictures, sort of in the background, we see Chandris and Thalystra and Jaina and Lorthamar, and they're not really doing much during the fight, and it just feels bad that Tyrande and Malfurion, who were fighting against her so much, and more of the ancients are not present, especially because Tyrande never wanted to be known as a queen because she didn't want to be, Queen Ashara. She just wanted to be a good leader. So
Mm-hmm.
it still feels a little bad that the characters there aren't really doing much
Mm-hmm.
against Ashara. And I don't know. I think it would have been interesting if the characters with like very deep rooted hatred of her were there.
Yeah.
So maybe it means we'll get them in a later patch doing even more things, but this feels pretty central to, like the formation of their character and how they decided to rebuild night elf culture and set up government after her rule, and how, she
Mm-hmm.
was so horrible with magic, and then then they tried to ban magic for a while, and we didn't have night elf mages until Cataclysm. It feels odd that the characters that set up a civilization uh designed to learn from her mistakes are not
Are not
present.
yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of
So
reminds me of the whole Toronto topic in general that we had before, because the information that you guys were given was that night elves got their revenge, right? Or something like that.
yeah, so to be fair, the person speaking, I don't think does a lot of lore interviews, so maybe they were just off guard or they misspoke.
Okay. Uh-huh.
But yeah, they said like basically, night elves got their revenge in 8-1, Tehran got revenge for the night elves. And it's like, well,
Which feels very
he
empty because we've barely seen Tyrande, and like, what kind of revenge is that?
Yeah, the really funny thing too is that so the story was all about Tyrande and Nathanos, fighting off against each other in the storyline, and Nathanos wasn't totally victorious, but he managed to hold Tyrande off long enough to transform two of the famous night elf fighters into undead. And Tyrande's still fighting in Darkshore, but meanwhile, Nathanos is in Darkshore, he's in Dazar'alor, and now he's even in Nazjatar. So it's like, what teleportation powers does this guy have if he can just like
Yeah.
manage all these things, like long distance, working remote, and they're just following his orders and hanging in there against, Tyrande, empowered by Elune, the Night Warrior, who is, apparently meant to be very powerful, but can't hold off an army without, that doesn't even have a leader present. So,
Yeah.
but I don't know. It's sort of like Jaina is kind of everywhere too. And at least we know Jaina is a really, powerful mage,
Mage, so
but
it
it's still
makes a bit
like,
more sense, but
but
yeah.
it's like, why is Jaina with Ashara? Like, I feel like Tyrande could be there instead. Because the other three
Yeah.
characters are elves,
Mm-hmm.
and then Jaina is just like, hi. I mean, maybe Jaina is mad that Ashara was involved with the Clotiran fleet being stolen, as well as the Lady Ashfane subplot. Maybe Jaina is there to get revenge against Lady Ashfane. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. It's just a little. I feel like Tyrande and Malfurion would definitely have more beef, being like, "Hi, Ashara, you like made our planet explode," and
Yeah,
like,
no, you're absolutely
yeah,
right. I mean, the question is also why can they both or they all be there?
yeah, five
Uh,
of them be there.
yeah, they can all be there. Why not? The
Yeah,
more the merrier. We're stronger together. No, but it's. I think I might be a little bit biased because I feel like this expansion is kind of like a Jaina expansion, so of course she's gonna be there. Um,
yeah,
but it does feel a little bit empty. Like I feel bad for night elves not only because of what happened to their city, but also because of the lack of sort of light on figures like Tyrande. But I don't know. I was hopeful that something would happen later, but then hearing that the night elves got their revenge, and now apparently Tyrande is not even present at the raid. I mean, of course things can still change. It makes it feel like maybe there's not gonna be much to do with night elves, which
yeah.
is kind of sad.
The only thing I can think of is that one of the Blizzard interviews hinted at some strife within the Alliance coming maybe in the future. Like, oh, we're seeing the Horde have strife, and maybe Alliance will in the future. So the only thing I can think of is that maybe there will be a split with the
Oh.
Night Elves where they want to be by themselves. But I still think it would have been cool if in
Hmm.
8.2 you have, like the Horde group deciding to play nice with the Alliance
Mm-hmm.
group, and then you have Tehran being like, okay, like I hate the Horde. I'm just here to fight Queen Ashara, but I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have anything to do with you guys forming a peace. I feel like that could have still set the seeds for,
Yeah,
oh, are they gonna
definitely.
split off?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like, oh, like, Jada's like, let's play nice Lorthmar, and Tehran's
Mm-hmm.
like, I hate all of you. I'm just here to get Queen Ashara. Like, stop
Mm-hmm.
with peace. So I don't know. We'll see, but I hope there's more for the Night Elves, especially because it's really dramatic to burn down the tree, and then it would be weird to never return to it. It would feel really hollow and done for shock value.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point too. Like once the fire has calmed down, like maybe we should have had even a cinematic of going back there, to see the remains of everything. And I think that could have been the perfect opportunity for
Yeah,
Tyrande to be the one who does that.
Yeah, I think this came up a lot with the Safe Haven cinematic, which I think was really well done. But when you put it in the context of, all these Horde cinematics, like how many cinematics we're going to get of Sourfang being remorseful for being involved in the burning of Teldrassil, and we haven't really seen any from a similar alliance point
Mm-hmm.
of view.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just weird to be like, oh, the guy who orchestrated the attack. Now we get to see him feeling sorry
Feeling
for the
bad.
attack
Yeah.
again and again.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I mean, it's interesting to explore, and the cinematics are well done.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's weird how that angle is explored very heavily, but then the really
Mm-hmm.
obvious story of like how is Tehran rebuilding or fighting her, arch enemy,
Mm-hmm.
that isn't really explored
Mm-hmm.
to any the same level of detail.
Hmm. A strife would be very interesting because I guess that could have also been slightly um what's the word, incited, that moment when Tyrande goes to Anduin asking for help and he basically
Mm-hmm.
tells her later, not now.
Yeah,
And
right.
that can also be a reason for her to feel like the Night Elves are separate from the Alliance and they're not that important even though they just lost everything.
Yeah, so like that's why I could totally see Toronto Malfurion just being like, well, we're fighting Ashara because it's a threat, and don't involve us in any of your little peace talks. We're
Mm-hmm.
just gonna do our thing, and maybe they're off doing their own little stealth mission on the side. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's just weird they're not even present in Nazjatar. Like I could see
Yeah, it
them not
definitely
caring
is.
about
Mm-hmm.
Mechagon, but it just seems odd that they're not in Nazjatar.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think maybe
Um,
we should move on to the
yeah,
next PTR topic, even though this is a very interesting one.
yep.
We have some visual updates to show you guys. We have some cool old god shoulder transmog.
Yep. Sadly, plate wearers only. These are the pauldrons of Zakul, which obviously will drop from Zakul, um, who is an old god boss wearing those shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like I mentioned, sadly they're plate only, but they match Cloth Mythic really well. And most of the gear is Naga themed, but this is old god themed. And yeah, it just looks really cool. I think it would be cool if there was Ashara armor that could also be transmogged, but we got old gods for plate right now,
Mm-hmm.
so it is what it is.
Wait,
It looks pretty cool though.
did you say it's the same one that the boss wears?
Yeah,
Oh, that makes it extra cool.
so he's like
Nice.
a weird faceless one with these
Yeah,
shoulders.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember. Zakul. Yes. Gotcha. Well, that's cool.
And
It
usually,
is a shame it is
yeah,
only plate, but it's still cool to see.
yeah. Usually the important bosses get the armor drops
Mm-hmm.
after them. Like Xavius had them in Maiden of Virtue, and like Garrosh did.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is another hint that like, hey, like this boss is actually a big deal if you didn't get it. You know how he's like a herald of the old gods. Like, look,
Mm-hmm.
you can even loot his really cool armor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the implications surrounding the boss and his weird, creepy abilities and references to the sleeping city will
Mm-hmm.
play a role in the future, but we will see. That's still a mystery for now.
Definitely seems like it.
Talking about the raid loot again quickly, we also got Azurite traits from the Eternal Palace loot. So there's always spec specific traits, but then there's one trait that is unique to all the armor from that zone that kind of reflects the atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones we have, one is called Loyal to the End, where your mastery is increased, and then uh, even more so by each ally that also has the Azurite. And when you die, your allies gain critical strike, haste, and mastery equal to the mastery bonus they got before you died. So that's sort of funny how like when you die they get buffed.
Paladins will be more happy. Can more people die for us, please?
Yeah.
Or red paladins, that is. Loyal to the end.
Uh,
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So it's a buff which is strengthened by more people and also strengthened by having people die.
yeah.
Maybe it's tactical to die in this case then. People with Ankh. Like, just die early in the fight so we can all be buffed and then use Ankh. Get back.
Yeah, or like maybe you have some interesting raid job, or like it would be if you want to clear debuffs, you could just die and then give people a
Mm-hmm.
buff and then get res, and then people pop heroism, maybe
Mm-hmm.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's undulating tides. Your damaging spells have a chance to crash a wave upon your target. When your health drops below 50%, you get a shield absorbing damage within 8 seconds. So it's like if you lose too much health, then you uh, deal less damage, but you are more gain survivability.
Oh, you do less damage.
Well, like the wave, the crashing wave stops appearing. You get a damage protection shield instead.
Mm.
And then the third one is for every million or so damage and healing done, you gain omnipotence, increasing your highest stat for 15 seconds, and then you heal for 5% of all arcane damage taken. And arcane is interesting because when I was talking about that Ashara phase that did the explosions if you didn't follow instructions, all of that damage was arcane. So maybe there are
Mm.
some
Mm-hmm.
fights that have interesting arcane
Mm-hmm.
mechanics to it. And yeah, for our last PTR topic, before we get into classic quickly, before the stress test is starting, you can tame giant armored dinosaurs in Rise of Ashara. Thanks to Petopia for finding this. They look really cool. If you're like, what's a giant armored dinosaur? If you remember Horizon from Throne of Thunder and Undasta from uh the not
MOP
Isle of
World Boss.
yeah, Isle of Giants. They can be tamed now, and they look really awesome.
It's really cool because Haradon is basically a boss. So it's like you're taming a boss, and the boss is now your pet. And
Yeah,
Ondasta is a massive dino, and now suddenly he is almost your size. It's actually really cute.
yeah, and people are very excited about these because Horizon is the first armored dire horn that is tameable, and it has the Zandalari
Mm.
armor.
Mm-hmm.
And while Undasta is not the first Devilsaur that has armor, it has very Zandalari themed armor.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks
It's
really
very
cool if
fitting,
you're
actually.
yeah. So yeah, they look super awesome. People are very excited about these.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would be too if I was a hunter. Quickly before we move on to the topic of classic, I just want to thank Lincoln for the 17 months subscription and Ashley Bithia for the 14 months sub. So thank you guys for that.
Yep.
And now we can quickly say the last few things about the topic of classic so that everyone can start jumping into the stress tests.
Yep. So there is a stress test on May 29th or in 4 minutes. And this was done because of all the issues last week. Blizzard did not get to test some of the things they wanted to. So they scheduled this additional one. All the people invited to last week's are in automatically. The level cap is 10 instead of 5. And again, the primary purpose is to test things. So this isn't like, oh, it was difficult to log in, so they gave me like free game time. Like
Yeah,
you could
no.
still be very well stuck at the login screen
Mm-hmm.
again. The issue is that they were not able to they wanted to test different types of bugs, and they didn't get around to testing some of the
Mm-hmm.
bugs because other bigger bugs are in the way. So like
Mm-hmm.
do not expect this to be like
Yeah.
like I don't know, Ragnaros spawning everywhere for 3 hours straight and like gold falling from the sky. Like, it's not going to be
Yeah.
that. This is a stress test.
And to be clear about testing, this is Blizzard testing things on their servers. This is not for you to test the game. I mean, you kind of indirectly are, but it's not for you to experience the game to see if you like it. It's for Blizzard to see how many people they can get into the same zones, and then they randomly do things like, hey, let's switch on this button which is supposed to spawn something, and let's see if people DC. Like it's that kind of thing, just testing out bugs
Yeah,
to make sure that the
but
game works once it's launching.
yeah, but to be fair, once the test ends, people can play those characters for 24 hours
Just like last time,
without.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and so you do sort of get, as like a thank you, you are able to
Play the game for a
explore
bit.
and play. Your character progress from the last test isn't wiped. It's just that the issue is you can't during that stress test, it might be difficult to log on, it might be laggy, you might be crashing a lot, you might not be able to make a character, and that's just sort of that's part of the stress test.
So if you're not a fan of the stress testing, what you can do is wait a few hours and then probably log in fine. That's also an option. But if you're part of the stress test, that's awesome for Blizzard, because then they get to test the stress, which is what they want to do.
Another thing that they opened for testing this past weekend is Warsong Gulch and the honor system. Warsong Gulch is coming in phase 3, and the honor system is coming in phase 2. So these are not coming at launch, but they need to start testing them now, especially with how the levels are capped at 30. It makes sense to test Warsong Gulch because you only have to be 10 to do it. So the honor system is pretty cool. There's ranks that you get every week based on the honorable kill system. There's gear that you can equip at level 60, really cool sets for every class. There are mounts that you can get, titles you can get, and all that started with testing, with focus testing on the 25th and 26th for Warsong Gulch. And yeah, as we want to just wrap up the news, I just wanted to highlight some of the guides on Wowhead and the BlizzCon party. With the PvP testing going on, we launched a series of classic Twink guides for level 19 characters. People really like playing them because they were battlegrounds to different level brackets, and if you were level 19 and had amazing gear, you were really overpowered.
Very strong.
And people really like the idea of farming for a best in slot list because you don't really have that currently in BFA. So we have a series of level 19 Twink guides and looking to expand that closer to the PvP phases for 29 and 39 and all that. We have a classic bag guide because bag slots are very limited. You start off with a traveler's backpack. There's no boosting a character with gigantic bags. There's no authenticator for extra slots. So we had a guide breaking down all the bag options to get at low levels and things interesting bags do, like quivers that help with hunter attack speed. With the Warsong Gulch weekend, we have honor system guides as well as a Warsong Gulch objective guide, so what is a good group to have to win, which is important because Warsong Gulch would just sort of drag on forever and ever. It's not like BFA where it just ends after a certain period of time. Who has the most captures? It just like you could just be in there for 5 hours if no one gets that, and there's no buffs that make people take more damage after a certain period. It just keeps lasting forever and ever and ever.
Oh, the flag carry, he doesn't get a debuff. Oh, cool. No. I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah. But yeah, so we are highlighting guides every few days. Today we had like a little fun item spotlight. I think we're gonna highlight class quests really soon. Just a reminder, we really appreciate everyone that uses the Wowhead client on Classic and then hits the upload button when they finish playing, because that lets us show a lot more information on NPCs and quest pages, like drop rates or map locations or where to turn a quest into. So the Wowhead team is playing a lot and uploading, but the more people doing it helps us expand the database faster, and it's nicer to have like drop rates based off of 100 people looting something versus 1.
The more data, the more accurate. So instead of thinking that this specific item only drops from this specific mob that this Wowhead employee happened to find, it's better to see 100 or 1,000 people looting that same item from maybe some other kind of mobs. Makes it easier for farming for anyone who's looking for particular items.
And then finally, really quickly, our BlizzCon party fundraiser is coming along, combo for the storm powered by Wowhead. And let me just check the Kickstarter. Before we smashed through our new stretch goals. The prize wheel is coming back, and we were super close to the final goal of expanding the art gallery at 39,000. And oh, we're so close. We're $100 away from the final stretch goal of the expanded art gallery. And our
Wow.
original goal was 19,000. So we have more than doubled the fundraising we hoped to get. So
That is
that's really
insane.
amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for all your support. And yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun organizing and setting up all the different things at the party.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be really fun.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually the last bit of thing that we wanted to cover.
Yep. I know that we rushed through things because the classic stress test is starting soon.
I think it's happening right now, even.
Yeah, so we if you want to read more about any of the topics, we have notes linked in the Wowhead article.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're gonna see if Stevon can log in, beat the login screen boss, and
The hardest
start
boss.
streaming the stress test for us.
Mm-hmm. But before we end it, though, I also want to thank Ole Relic for the Prime sub and Darhel77 for the 3 months resub. Thank you, guys. Those were the last subs. Hopefully, I didn't miss anyone. Those were the names that I saw. But yeah, as we said, this is kind of unconventional. Very, very short show. Not too much cat talk today. And we also had the show a day earlier than usual because I'm traveling to the US tomorrow, which also will affect next week's show as I'm not going to be at home. Hopefully, we'll be able to make a sort of IRL show where I go and meet Perk in person and maybe hopefully do the show together. That's going to be the plan, at least. Fun. Hopefully. If everything works out, fingers crossed, that'll be the plan. But yeah, thank you to everyone for watching. And if you were invited to the stress test last week, remember that you will have access this time too. And maybe they've invited more people as well. I'm actually not quite sure. But you can also enjoy it by staying here in this channel, as Steven will probably be doing some gameplay if he manages to get in. And if he doesn't, I'm sure there's a lot of other streamers who are doing it too. So just browse around on Twitch and you can also experience it with the rest of the people.
Yep. Again, thank you so much for your support, especially to our classic site as we keep adding features to it literally every day. And we look forward to having even more cool things to share. And I hope I get to see you in person next week.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope so too. And get to meet Brightpaw first time ever.
I know. He's like, he went away after he was eating my arm, but he's lurking somewhere. I'm sure he's happy to hear the news.
No. Yeah, I need a first time selfie with Brightpaw for sure. For sure. Let's see if he's bigger than me. Yeah. He might be. Yeah. But yeah, let's do the high five before we go off.
Yeah. All right. So 3, 2, 1.
Bam. Yes. Perfect. We did it. And I've seen some people comment in the chat already that they're in the stress test, which is awesome because that means it's probably a lot more stable than it was last week, because last week everyone were complaining about not being able to get in. So that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Right. Have a great rest of your afternoon, evening, morning, maybe, depending on where you live. And we will hopefully see you guys next week, regular time, on Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific. Or is it 1 p.m. Pacific?
1 p.m. Pacific.
1 p.m. Pacific. Yes, I knew that.
Yep.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.